All right, so get this. We're diving into some seriously out there stuff today, folks. The Zecharia Sitchin and the Anunnaki. Ancient Sumerian texts, gold mining, genetic engineering, we've got it all. You sent us a YouTube video transcript and some book excerpts, so we're really going to get deep into Sitchin's world.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild world. We're
Yeah.
talking about one person's interpretation of ancient history, and he drew some pretty bold conclusions from these Sumerian texts.
Okay, so let's start with Sumer. Why is this ancient civilization so crucial to Sitchin's theory?
Well, Sumer is considered one of the earliest civilizations.
Yeah.
They developed writing, math, astronomy way ahead of their time, and Sitchin believed their knowledge was just too advanced. Like they had help.
So he's saying they had a little help from some friends from another planet.
Exactly. He claimed that the Sumerian cuneiform texts describe an alien race called the Anunnaki, and they came to Earth from a planet called Nibiru. And here's where it gets interesting. They needed gold.
For jewelry, spaceship bling.
No, not quite. Sitchin said they needed to suspend gold particles in Nibiru's atmosphere, like a planetary shield to protect their world.
Hold on. So Earth was like a giant intergalactic gold mine for these Anunnaki.
That's what Sitchin theorized. And according to him, this need for gold. That's actually how humans came into the picture. The Anunnaki, they had a labor shortage in their gold mines, so they decided to create a worker race.
You're saying humans were genetically engineered by aliens to mine gold. Okay, now that's a history lesson I definitely missed. But why gold? Couldn't a super advanced civilization find another way?
Well, it gets a bit more complicated. Sitchin believed the Anunnaki needed gold in a very specific form, a fine powder, for its atmospheric properties. He suggested it wasn't just about the element itself, but its unique qualities when suspended in the atmosphere.
So it's not like they were making gold bars and shipping them off planet. There was a specific scientific reason for this gold-obsessed.
Right. Now, Sitchin himself wasn't a scientist, so his explanation was based on his interpretation of those ancient texts. Whether there's any scientific basis for using gold in that way, it's still debated, but it definitely adds another layer to this story.
It definitely makes me rethink those stories of King Midas and his golden touch. But if they went through all this trouble to create humans, why did they leave?
Well, Sitchin believed the Anunnaki weren't exactly a unified group. He talks about internal power struggles and conflicts, especially between two key figures, Enki and Enlil.
Family drama on a cosmic scale.
Exactly. And Sitchin suggests that these internal conflicts might have even led to the Great Flood, a story found in both Sumerian and biblical accounts.
Hold on. Are you saying the biblical flood was caused by feuding aliens?
That's what Sitchin proposed. He interpreted those ancient texts as historical records of actual events, including a deliberate act by the Anunnaki that reshaped the course of human history.
Wow, that's a lot to process. So these Anunnaki, they created us, maybe flooded the planet, and then just took off? What happened next?
Well, Sitchin believed they left behind more than just stories. He saw their legacy in some of the most impressive structures on Earth, like the pyramids of Giza and other megalithic sites.
He's saying the pyramids were built by aliens.
Not exactly built by them. But Sitchin theorized they might have played a role. He even had this idea of a Corridors Lawania, a landing corridor, marked by these structures, suggesting they were part of a global navigation system for the Anunnaki spacecraft.
So those pyramids could have been ancient alien landing beacons. Okay, that's just blown my mind. But I have to ask, if they were so technologically advanced, why not just build these structures themselves? Why go through all the trouble of creating humans?
That's a great question, and one that Sitchin doesn't really answer. But remember, he based his theories on his interpretation of ancient texts. It's possible these texts don't contain the full picture, or that Sitchin's interpretation is just one of many possibilities.
Fair enough. But speaking of stories, Sitchin didn't just stop with ancient Sumer and Egypt, right? He found evidence of the Anunnaki all over the world.
You're right, he did. But before we get into their global impact, let's dive a little deeper into the Anunnaki themselves. Who were these beings? What were their motivations? And what exactly did they leave behind? That's where things start to get really interesting. So welcome back. Let's get into who these Anunnaki were. According to Sitchin, he didn't see them just as some random aliens you know. He saw them as a whole society, with kings, princes, councils making decisions.
Like an intergalactic royal family, weekend trips to their version of the Hamptons.
Well, probably not the Hamptons. But Sitchin did identify key figures, like Anu, the ruler of their home planet, Nibiru. And, just like any family, their rivalries. Anu's sons, Enki and Enlil, They clashed over the fate of humanity.
Okay, so we've got family drama, a power struggle, and the whole fate of humanity hanging in the balance. Definitely getting some soap opera vibes here.
Right. And it gets even more interesting when you consider Sitchin connected these conflicts to some of the big events described in ancient texts, like the Great Flood, for example.
Wait, he thought the flood was caused by alien infighting. That's
Right.
what?
He did. He pointed to specific texts, like the Atrahasis epic, one of the most important Sumerian myths. It describes the Anunnaki's role in bringing about the flood.
So he's taking these ancient myths as literal historical accounts.
That's his interpretation. And for those familiar with Sitchin, this is where his work is really fascinating. He looked at the Epic of Gilgamesh, another Sumerian text, and saw it not just as a hero's journey, but as a story about humans seeking knowledge from the Anunnaki, possibly even immortality.
So he's weaving together all these ancient narratives, finding connections most people wouldn't even think to look for, like a giant puzzle he's trying to solve.
Exactly. And the centerpiece of that puzzle, according to Sitchin, is this planet Nibiru, the home of the Anunnaki.
Right, the mysterious 12th planet. That keeps popping up in conspiracy theories. What exactly did Sitchin believe about Nibiru?
He theorized it has a very long elliptical orbit, meaning it only enters our solar system every 3,600 years.
So like a cosmic comet, swinging by every few millennia.
Right. And Sitchin claimed this wasn't just a casual flyby. He attributed many cataclysmic events on Earth, including the Great Flood, to the gravitational disruptions caused by Nibiru's passage. He even suggested some of those ancient structures we were discussing, like the pyramids, might have served as markers or beacons for the Anunnaki during these visits.
Okay, so if I'm following this correctly, we're talking about a planet with a really bad parking job, causing major havoc every time it swings by Earth. That raises so many questions. First off, if the Anunnaki were so technologically advanced, why even risk coming into our solar system if it caused so much destruction? Couldn't they have found a safer way to get their gold?
That's a great question, and one that Sitchin doesn't really answer. But remember, he based his theories on his interpretation of ancient texts. It's possible those texts don't contain the full picture, or that Sitchin's interpretation is just one of many possibilities.
Fair enough, but let's say, for argument's sake, that Nibiru does exist, and it is on this 3,600-year cycle. Does that mean...
It could be coming back. That's a possibility, according to Sitchin. He believed their return was foretold in these ancient texts, and that it would usher in a new era for humanity.
Okay, hold on. Before we jump ahead to the Anunnaki's grand return, let's go back to the evidence. What specifically in these Sumerian texts led Sitchin to these conclusions?
Well, he claimed they contained astronomical data. That supported his theory of Nibiru's existence and its orbit. He also pointed to specific Sumerian words and symbols that he believed referred to the Anunnaki and their technology.
Like what? Give us an example.
For example, the Sumerian word din, G-I-R, often translated as gods, is interpreted by Sitchin as the righteous ones of the rockets. He saw this as evidence that the Anunnaki arrived on Earth in spacecraft.
So he's taken these ancient words and applying a very specific, and some might say unorthodox translation to fit his theory.
Right, and this is where some of the criticism of Sitchin's work comes in. Many scholars argue that he's misinterpreting these ancient texts, cherry-picking information to support his preconceived notions.
So there's a lot of debate about the accuracy of his translations and interpretations.
Definitely. It's important to remember that Sitchin's work is highly controversial. But whether or not he got everything right, he definitely raised some interesting questions about our past and the possibility of ancient alien contact.
And his ideas have certainly captured the imaginations of a lot of people. There's a whole community out there who believe in the Anunnaki and their return.
That's right. And for those who are intrigued by Sitchin's theories, there's another fascinating layer to his work that we haven't even touched on yet. His interpretation of biblical stories, he believed that many of these stories, like the Garden of Eden, the Tower of Babel, and even the story of Noah's Ark, could be traced back to the Anunnaki and their interactions with humanity.
So he's saying that the Bible is basically a retelling of ancient alien encounters. That's a pretty bold claim.
It is, and it's one that we'll explore in more detail in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we're back and ready to finish up our deep dive into Zecharia Sitchin's Anunnaki theories. Sumerian texts, ancient structures, rogue planets. It's been a wild ride. But now you're saying he connected all of this to the Bible.
He did. It's one of the most debated parts of his work. Sitchin saw the Bible, particularly the Old Testament, not just as a religious text, but as a historical record, a retelling of those Sumerian accounts, just filtered through a different cultural lens.
Okay, so how do the Anunnaki fit into all of this?
Well, let's take the Garden of Eden story. Most people see it as an allegory about temptation and disobedience. But Sitchin took it more literally, as an account of the Anunnaki's creation of humankind. He even suggested that the forbidden fruit might represent knowledge and maybe even reproductive abilities that the Anunnaki didn't want humans to have at first.
So it's a very different take on original sin, not about disobeying God, but disobeying our alien creators.
Right. And this theme of knowledge and forbidden knowledge, it pops up in a lot of ancient myths, like Prometheus stealing fire from the gods, or the Tower of Babel. Sitchin saw that as humans trying to reach the heavens, maybe to get back the knowledge they lost, or even challenge the Anunnaki's authority.
Wow, it really makes you think. Could these ancient stories hold clues to a past we don't fully understand?
Exactly. And Sitchin believed those clues weren't just in the Near East. He saw parallels between the Anunnakis and deities in other cultures all over the world.
So the Anunnaki influence was global, like they were traveling all over ancient Earth, leaving their mark on every civilization.
That's how Sitchin saw it. He pointed to these recurring themes: powerful sky gods, advanced technology, stories of creation and destruction, all hinting at a shared origin, contact to the Anunnaki way back when.
Okay, so we've gone from Sumerian texts to biblical stories to a global Anunnaki influence. It's a lot to take in, but let's get back to that big question. If Nibiru is real and it comes back every 3,600 years, does that mean the Anunnaki are coming back?
Sitchin definitely thought so. And his work has fueled a lot of speculation about their return. Some think it'll be a golden age for humanity. Others think it'll be a time of upheaval and judgment.
So a cosmic reunion or an alien invasion sounds like we're getting into the realm of pure speculation now.
Yeah, a bit. But it's important to remember, Sitchin's theories are based on his interpretations of these ancient texts. And those interpretations are still debated. There's no solid scientific proof to confirm or deny any of it.
So where does that leave us? After this deep dive, I'm honestly more fascinated than ever. Sitchin's theories are definitely thought-provoking. Even if you don't take them as gospel, they make you think differently about history, religion, our place in the universe.
I agree. Whether you believe in the Anunnaki or not, I think Sitchin's work is valuable. It makes us curious and question what we think we know. It reminds us that history isn't always clear-cut, and there's always more to learn.
Well said. Who knows, maybe one day we'll find proof that confirms or debunks all of this. But until then, the mystery of the Anunnaki remains a puzzle. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
And remember, keep exploring